Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Living of These Days. Focus today is what offends you? How are you offended? And how do you offend other people? What should offend us and what should not offend us? What do we allow ourselves to get sucked into? What should we be offended by? There's a story of a preacher who, in the pulpit, in the middle of his sermon, dropped the F-bomb, dropped a profanity in his sermon. And upon saying that word, that I won't say, he asked the question in the sermon that were people more offended by that word than they are by the truth that a child died of hunger last night, or somebody lost their job today? What offends them? That they were more offended by a word that was dropped in a sermon than the fact that another human being was suffering. Does the fact that a priest saying a forbidden word in public, I confess that I've used a word or two therapeutically in my life, but that it's more offensive than the existence of evil in this world? And how does that offense move us? It's more convenient to be disturbed by a word than it is by an act of a human being, unless that word is used in violence to another person. What offends you? How do you respond to offense? How do you offend other people? Just a pondering tonight. Are you offended by the substantial or the superficial? And just look at your Facebook feed, and I guess an answer might appear to that question. It's estimated that internationally there are between 20 million and 40 million people who are human trafficked as modern slavery today. Does that offend you? What truly offends us in this world is what wakes us up at 3 o'clock in the morning in tears. What breaks your heart? How are you offended in this world? Some might say, well, how dare you, Pastor, for swearing, for dropping profanity? Are you more offended by the word shit than the word of the pain and suffering of our brothers or sisters? We are selectively offended. How long did it take for the Germans or the Americans or the world to be offended by gas chambers and ovens in Auschwitz and Birkenau and all the concentration camps? How long did it take for the world to be offended then? Are we offended by poverty or racism? An article in Fast Company, or a blog by Tamina Tayebi, posted on the question of how does the taking offense happen? What actually motivates this ubiquitous phenomenon? The taking offense, or feeling offended, often involves an experience of negative emotions, she writes, caused by a word or an action which is in conflict with what we expect or believe to be right or appropriate, moral or acceptable behavior. Feeling offended or describing something as offensive is deeply rooted in those expectations that govern our daily interactions, she writes. Our judgments are informed by our values and our beliefs, and they become a yardstick against which we evaluate others, including those we don't know very well. Our belief in these values may be an important part of our identity, thus giving us a sense of entitlement to take offense because we believe that those values are salient and should be, among other things, respected. As research has shown, our expectations, values, and beliefs, she continues, are all based on our previous experiences accumulated throughout our life. These are unique to each individual, which explains why people take offense for so many different reasons. This is one of the many reasons there is so much anger and offense on, for example, social media. People constantly take offense at what they think is a breach of their values. This gets worse when some take it to a nasty level by lashing out in defense of their own values, which ultimately creates a vicious and endless cycle of causing and taking offense. So I've been pondering the concept of what is it that offends you? When we hear a child died of hunger today, does that offend you? A child was sexually exploited today. A family was evicted from their home today. A politician lied today. Another person died of the virus today. A government killed a dissenter today. Somewhere in this world. An immigrant was attacked today. A child was bullied today. Do these offend you? A trans woman was murdered today. A person with a disability was denied a job today. A single mother or father was fired for choosing to stay home with their sick child today. A terminally ill person was denied treatment today. An immigrant child held in detention died or was sexually assaulted today. A Christian was murdered for their faith today. A Muslim was murdered for their faith today. A family went to bed hungry last night. A police officer was killed last night. A black person was murdered by a police officer last night. Do these offend you? Do we begin putting in perspective that which offends us? And then how do we respond? The person refusing to wear a mask spit in the face of a coffeehouse barista today. Or a person asked to wear a mask was offended today for asking to have a mask on. I guess offense is relative. Again, the question, what should we hold as offensive to our core values as human beings? And what is merely a disagreement or a difference of opinion? And how do we act out our offense? I share these thoughts beginning because I was thinking of that illustration. It wasn't me in the pulpit that dropped the F-bomb, but it was an illustration made by a preacher, again, to say, is it more offensive to people that a word might be used versus the reality of the pain and suffering of another human being, unless that word is used in the pain and suffering of another human being? I seek common human offenses that truly connect with our deepest empathy for another human being. I guess that's my point today. Our compassion for another human being. If love is the root of the offense, feeling offended in the name of love for another human being, then that is where we should start, I think. Dignity of another human being. Let us examine our core values then and of what dignity and decency is in this world, and find agreement on true offensive acts or language that go to the very core of our existence, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is worth pondering, because we are offended so easily these days. Let us pay attention to our response in proportion to the offense. Let us pay attention to what should truly offend us. And let us act as repairers of the breach, or act in proportion to that, to stand with those offended. I was also thinking in Scripture from the wisdom literature of Ecclesiastes and Proverbs that speak to this. Ecclesiastes 7. I'll read it in two versions, the New Revised Standard Version and the Message, which I think can give us perspective. So Ecclesiastes 7, beginning at the 20th verse. Surely there is no one on earth so righteous as to do good without ever sinning. Do not give heed to everything that people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you have yourself cursed others. The Message version of that. There's not one totally good person on earth, not one who is truly pure and sinless. Don't eavesdrop on the conversation of others. What if the gossip's about you? And you'd rather not hear it. You've done that a few times, haven't you? Said things behind someone's back you should have said to their face. And Proverbs 6, the other scripture. The NRSV says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and the hands that shed innocent blood. A heart that devises wicked plans, feet that hurry to run to evil, and a lying witness who testifies falsely, and one who sows discord in a family. The Message version of that Proverbs 6, 7 things God hates. Here are 6 things God hates, and one that he loathes with passion. Eyes that are arrogant, a tongue that lies, hands that murder the innocent, a heart that hatches evil plots, feet that race down a wicked track, a mouth that lies under oath, a troublemaker in the family. Ponder these in relation to what offends us. So in conclusion, let us truly be offended by the emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual destruction of another human being, be it in thought, word, or deed. And let us be offended by what offends God, who created all in God's image. So ponder that with me as I pray into those offenses that I feel in my response. So, peace. Take care.